Hi everyone. Today we are continuing with part 2 of our inner child and fun floral bouquet. We are continuing with last week's project, so you are going to want to grab the background that you created and the little character that you started.
And I have with me some scissors, my trusty gel pen, and an assortment of different things, which obviously we're all going to have different things. But I have some papers with flowers on them. I have some papers with bugs on them. I don't know if you can see that. I have some tissue paper with flowers on them. And I also have an assortment of just regular paper that I'm probably going to do some rolling on, printing, maybe some stenciling. You're gonna want some green paper, some colors that make you think of flowers. If you want to grab, if you're somebody who has Uniball pens, I have a silver and a gold here. I don't know if I'll end up using them. And I also am gonna probably use a little bit of white titanium white, and you're gonna want to have some trusty gel medium. These are the things that I anticipate using. You might also want to have some colored pencils or your watercolor. And you might even want, if you're somebody who has it, you might want to have an assortment of stamps. These are some floral stamps that I have. Um, you might want to have a punch around. I have a bunch of different kinds of punches here that these will make some flowers or stars. So it's really everything goes. It's a big smorgasbord tonight, and that is what we will be working on. So I hope to see you all there and see what we can create. I'm excited for this. So the first thing that I'm going to have everyone do is grab your little character that you made last week, no matter what your little character looks like. And as you can see, I started to cut out my character because I just wanted to, save a little bit of time. And just so you know, we may not totally finish this lesson tonight. We will definitely start it together, but one of the things I love to do is have us start it and then have you continue on your own and then post your finished piece in either the WhatsApp group or in the Raz Jacobson art group, either way, or both places, to be honest. So what I'm going to have you do and notice is that when I cut my character, you can see I leave a little teeny bit, weeny bit of white around the character, kind of like a little halo. And it's an opportunity to clean up or change things as you go along. So if I decided I did not want this girl to have this weird sticky outy hair, I could cut those little things out. If I could completely change her hairdo, I could completely change her, I could change the outline of her right now. This is the moment to make those kinds of decisions. So take your moment to do that. And I'm just going to bend mine a little bit to get it flattened out. And there's no rush here. I know I'm going to be going a little bit faster pace. So just stay cool and know that this is not a race. After you get your character set up, I want to just kind of show you where we're headed tonight. There are multiple ways you could go, and there is no right or wrong here. So you're just going to have to decide how you want this to play out. Do you want your paper to go like this? There's going to be we're going to integrate another element in here. So I just grabbed another sheet of paper that I have here. For all intents and purposes, I'm going to call this the vase, but it doesn't have to be a vase. It could be a platform. It could be anything, but I'm going to just call it the vase. So one of the things you have to think about is, do you want to use another piece of paper here to perhaps create a vase of flowers? And do you want your character to be standing beside this vase, in front of this vase? Do you want your character to be like swinging out of the vase? Do you want the paper to go in a different type of direction? I'm going to go this way. Let's see. So it's going, more horizontally with your character swinging off to the side this way. You have to kind of like see which thing makes the most sense. Do you like the character bouncing up to a different direction? So everybody's piece is going to be a little bit different. And you might say, I don't really want that weird it could also be, sorry, I was just going to say, it could also be that your character is standing on top of this little thing. So if you like the idea of integrating something on top of this, you can do that. You don't have to. You don't have to. Nothing here is, there's no right or wrong way here. So the first thing I'm going to have to decide is which way I want my little character to swing off to here. Swing. So one of the very first things I'm noticing is I feel like that's a lot of color over there. So one of the first things and yours may look perfectly fine, but that's a lot of color happening over there for me. And I just think I need to add a little bit of white, just a little bit behind this character because I want my character to pop out a little bit on top of this background. So I'm just putting a little bit of white there. So hopefully you'll be able to see what I mean. So my character will pop off just a little bit. And again, there's no right or wrong here. Your area, your background may support your character a lot better than mine did, but she's just getting lost in that background there. It's just very, very busy. So that's going to be it's going to give a little halo around my little character.
Using a dry brush and some titanium white, I'm just putting down enough paint so that that background recedes a little bit. It's not to obliterate the background, it's just to push it back so my character is a little more visible. And you may not need to do that at all. And I will add that I'm liking that it looks like my little character is shooting out of that vase.
Then if I'm going to go with this bouquet idea, this vase idea, like I said, so then it's a matter of how tall is it going to be? How tall seems right to you? I feel like this is maybe a little bit too much vase. So I'm going to cut this thing down to something that seems like the right height for me. And you can either keep it as a rectangle, you can round the bottom, you can do whatever you like with your vase.
Well, I just used scissors to cut down my little vase and then I rounded the edges, but you could rip and you can make really any shape vase that you want. So it doesn't have to be this big chunky thing. It could be skinny and narrow and tall, whatever you want, whatever shape suits your mood. The next step in our process, I am going to set aside this piece and we are going to begin building our bouquet, which means we're going to be creating a lot of different flowers. I want to show you a couple of different ways to create leaves and ultimately flowers. Now, I did them on this little scrap of paper, but I recommend that you do all these shapes on one sheet of paper and then you can cut them all out at the end. I'm grabbing my gel pen, which is something that I can put down and it is not water activated, which means it's not going to get smeary when I add water. And I'm just making a very, very basic outline of 3 leaves, and I'm going to show you how we can approach these in 3 different ways. Now, you can leave your leaves very simple like this, or you can grab your marker and add some veins or some shapes or some patterns. And so I am going to be doing that. And then I'm going to show you 3 different ways. We're going to do one with watercolor, one with colored pencils, one with markers. And eventually I'm going to show you how to do some with paint and some stencils and some stamps. You're just going to try and create a variety, just like if you were going to have a garden or a bouquet. We want a lot of different kinds to create interest. For my first leaf, I am just going to use my Pentel water brush and I'm going to grab a little bit of green on the tip of my brush and I'm going to apply it.
And I'm going to drop it in. And when I drop it in, I'm just putting it into a little bit of the leaf. And while that is still wet, I'm going to I'm going to go into this other green here, this like light green. And I'm just gonna drop that in while things are sort of wet. And obviously you can make green, you know, if you blend yellow and blue, you'll get some kind of a greeny shade. So I'm gonna just drop that in there and I'm gonna leave it alone and let that dry because that's watercolors and that's gonna take a minute and it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm gonna leave that. A second way to roll is you can get colored pencils. So if you're somebody who's got colored pencils, you're gonna wanna get a few different color greens. So I'm gonna grab 3 different colors and it can be any greens. So I'm honestly not thinking about this. Along the stems and the veins, I'm going a little bit darker. And then I'm gonna just grab a different green and kind of go on top of all of that. All the leaves are different and they don't even have to be green. They could be orange, they could be yellow. Here in this part of the world, we're full court press into fall. Absolutely gorgeous today. And so they do not have to be green leaves. I'm just thinking about like a regular floral bouquet. So that's why I landed on this. But you can see I'm grabbing another color green. So I'm just stacking them all up here. And I'll even grab the lightest color green here and go over maybe the outside. And then I like to grab my white pencil, my white Prisma, and I like to go over the whole entire leaf. And that creates another type of a leaf look. And I even go over my black lines as well. So it pushes it all back. So that's a second kind of a leaf look that you can go with. A third kind of a leaf look is markers. So I could go into my markers. And I like to play around with these things. Like, honestly, I don't even know if these markers are water activated, but I'm just going into a little bit of a blue, a little bit of a green.
I decided to pull out some Posca markers that I have.
These are acrylic paint inside of these little tubes, and this one's called just green. And all of mine, the size I like, are the they're the 3 millimeter. And so they are very concentrated color. And so you can just put them in if you like that. And the nice thing about them is that they layer. So I could even put in some blue, make some polka dots.
Now, as I said, I'm just using scraps of paper that I have around, but I do encourage you to use a large sheet of paper to create some different shapes. So I'm going to just grab some green paints that I have, and I'm now going to show you how we can make leaves with a couple of different acrylic green paints.
So for this one, I'm going to just dip into some green paint. This is regular light green Liquitex. And all I'm going to do is make some of those same sort of diamond-ish shapes. And you can do however you want. So I'm going to just make 3 of them. Honestly, I'm sort of just using it to wipe my paint. So I've got 3 leafy-ish shapes. And then I'm going to dip into a second color green if you have it. If you don't, you could add a little bit of white to that green and that will give you a second color. So I'm just going to grab the second lighter color here. And I'm going to go over. So it's going to create a little bit of a highlight there. I don't know how well you can see that in the video. It's a little bit hard to see. So I've got that. And then my third color, honestly, you could do anything. You could go toward yellow, you could go towards the greens. I have a dark phthalo green here. So I'm going to just go in there and I'm going to smear that around a little bit. So one side of my leaf is like a little bit darker than the other, but you can't go wrong.
You want to create a variety of leaf shapes, and I would say between 7 to 10 different leaves, and just so that you have a variety to choose from, and then you're going to set them aside to dry.
But once the paint dries, so these were paint earlier, same process. All I did was a little bit of dark, a little bit of middle, and a little bit of white, or sorry, a little bit of bright. What you can do is you can go around your leaf with your black marker, and then you can create some fun variation on your leaves, right? So you can make some really fun little um, shapes and patterns. So that's kind of looks like a little football leaf. And then I could do a similar kind of thing on this one, but maybe this one, I want it to be um, maybe polka dots. So just play around and see what you like to do for your leaves. And then what I will do is you can either cut them. So I'm going to show you a cut one. And when I cut them, I tend to do that same thing. I leave a little bit of white, that little halo around them so that you can see that they kind of glow a little. And what that will do is when I grab my background, it will make them pop a little bit because even on the darkest areas, there's going to be that little halo of white to make them pop, make them stand out. Whereas if I didn't have that, it would just get a little bit like a muddy looking kind of situation. But even that is, it's not a problem if people do that. You might also want to do something with stems at this point. I don't know what you're going to need. You may not know what you're going to need, but this is a good moment to maybe cut some stems or they can be cut into different lengths, but I just made what I make four. I don't know if I'm going to use them or not, so I'm going to just set them aside. Now we're getting into flowers. Okay. One of the things we want to do is think about what your favorite flowers are when you think of a garden. Are you someone who likes pinks? Are you someone who likes reds, purples? What do you like? We want to think of a bouquet that you would love to get.
Now, for this next part, you do not have to have a stencil, but I know some people have them, and so I just want to show you how you could use them in this project. I'm going to start with this, I'm going to use my pink piece of paper, and I'm just going to grab a stencil and apply a couple of different colors of paint. I usually use 3 different colors, and the trick with stencils is that you want to use very little paint. It's more about just a hint of color rather than super saturating with color.
So I have this thing, hopefully you can see it looks like a rose. It's big. One of the things that we're going to want in this piece is a big flower as a focal point. So you're going to want to have one. This is one way to do it. You can also freehand it, but I'm going to just show you this as a technique. And again, you do what you can and do not stress if you don't have something.
I decided to go with a yellow rose, and so I am grabbing some yellow paint. And when you are using a stencil or when you're doing a stencil, people have the tendency to want to load a lot of paint onto their brush and they want to really super saturate it. The thing you have to know about stencils is you put a little bit on your brush, bang off a lot of the excess on the brush, and then just used a little bit. We're just going for light layers over top the other. When it comes to stencils, less is more.
And then say I wanted to put a little bit of orange into this. I can grab a little bit of orange. I can bang it into my little paper here, and I can, that is not good. You don't want your stencil to move. That is the one thing. Sorry. I'm just, I can get it back there. Come on. It's fine. Okay, so then I'm gonna come up here and get my center a little bit done. Maybe I'll go a little bit more down there just to fix what happened there. And then maybe I want a third color. Maybe I want a little bit of a darker pink color, but maybe you only wanted one color. I'm just trying to show you what you can do here. So I'm gonna just pound a little bit of a pink in here. And all then I have to do is lift up, and you can see I have a very funky looking flower, and I can cut this thing out however I want, whatever seems right. And if I grabbed one of my little leaves that I made, you will see here that we're going to have a cute little flower situation. So that's kind of where so I'm going to set my little flower off to the side there. So we want some, just like in a garden, we want big ones, little ones, we want an assortment. So now say I have these pink papers, we can play around with different kinds of flowers. Now, one of the things I definitely recommend is when you make flowers, just like in a garden, you don't usually have just like one flower. We try to have flowers in groupings. And so we're going to create some groupings. So I recommend that everyone does between 3 to 5 of each flower that you create. And we want some of them to be tall and thin. We want some of them to be oval. We want some of them to be round. But you can totally play with this. They can be, no two flowers are exactly the same. So you can make whimsical, silly looking flowers like this, right? This one has 4 petals. This one has 3. And I'm going to do one more here. And then I'm going to cut these out. You can do whatever you want. Just make your own unique bouquet. Color as much or as little as feels right to you. So this, like I said, this is pink construction paper. And I'm using a colored pencil to just create some kind of an effect. And I feel like that's a cute little flower. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut those out.
At this point in the process, I am just cutting out my flowers, and I actually am going to grab another sheet of paper and I'm going to make a whole bunch of different flowers. Some of them are with stamps, some of them I draw freehand, but for the purposes of this video, I am just going to go quickly because you can really design your own flowers. You can even cut things off of wrapping paper. You can cut things out of books. You can even grab things off of the internet and make copies and color them in, whatever you like to do. So I'm setting those aside for now, and I will come back to them later and fill them in. But I do want to spend a moment to show you another way to make a flower, which is really fun. I am grabbing a very bright sheet of construction paper, and as you can see, it has a torn edge to it. I love a torn edge. It gives it a really cool look when you glue them down. But all I'm doing is grabbing something and making something that vaguely looks like an oval flower. And I'm gonna do 3 of them. And I'm gonna lay them down side by side. And what I'm creating is something that's going to look like a poppy. So it's just a little bit of the flower, but I'm grabbing them here so you can get a sense of they're all different. There's nothing perfect about this. They all have that torn edge. And then I'm going to go and grab a couple of other pieces of paper. Some of them have a print, some of them don't. It doesn't matter. We're going to layer them in a way that's going to make them look like a poppy.
I've got a couple different papers here. This one is double-sided, and I have some red. All I'm going to do here is I'm going to rip some other sheets of paper, and I'm going to begin stacking and making my own homemade flower here just by stacking ripped paper.
And I decided I wanted to make a fun little center here. So I'm adding one more layer of paper, and then I feel like I got it the way I like it. So again, it's all very personal. You decide how you want to make your flowers look, however many layers.
By the way, look how cute this is gonna be with my little stem. How cute is that? That is like an adorable little something or other. So I'm gonna just set that aside. I have a good feeling about that.
At this point in class, participants went into breakout rooms where they shared with other people about how they were feeling about the process, and they showed people one of their favorite creations to that point. And while I was in the main room, I decided to continue working on some additional flowers that you're seeing here. And I actually got into a little bit of paint, and I decided to paint some of them. So that is what you're seeing here in super fast time. Obviously, this took a little bit of time to do, and you can do as many or none of the things that I'm showing you here. When people return from the breakout rooms, I grabbed my background again and my little vase, and really this is where the games begin. This is where we get to play around with placement. So you get to pull your flowers out, and you get to play around and see what best works for your piece. This is the part of the process that is very fussy and fidgety. There's no right or wrong here. Just like in organizing a bouquet, you have to decide how tall you want your stems to be, how short you want your stems to be, where you want them to be, if you want them to be standing upright, if you want them to be flopping over. But it's a really fun part of the process, and just fuss around with it like you were a child, like you're playing with paper dolls, or it will make sense to you and you'll know when it's right. I do think it's important for you to know that while I was doing this, I was not gluing anything down. I'm just moving things around and enjoying playing around a little bit. The gluing part comes a little bit later when I'm more certain.
But that is really cute. And then all I'm doing is I'm starting to layer on top. I'm starting to literally layer on top all the fun little flowers that I made. And you're going to want to have different heights. We want probably some things to look like they're coming over the vase.
Eventually, when I do decide to glue down my vase, I don't glue the entire thing down. I glue down the lower portion of the vase, and then I leave like a little flap so I can tuck things underneath. It's also important for me to point out that I'm using a glue stick for this project. Normally, I would use like Mod Podge, or I would use a gel medium, but this was handy and it gives you a little bit more play time to set something than those other adhesives do. Thing I do want to talk about is the idea of a gesture in a painting. And as you can see, my piece has a strong gesture, which is like a feeling of movement. Mine kind of goes off to that top right. It's from the bottom left to the top right. I'm really trying to make everything angle in that direction and really draw your eye up to my character. If you're not doing yours this way, that's perfectly fine. But for my purposes, I want my character to be sort of like a focal point where all the energy is going. You'll have to decide where you want the energy to go in your piece. Maybe your flowers are more important than your character. Maybe your character is going to be buried behind the flowers or peeking out behind some flowers. So just be thinking about if you want your flowers to be how you want them to angle, what the energy is of the piece, and what direction. It's just a fun other thing to be thinking about. Once I got my piece looking vaguely like I wanted it to look, then I committed to using the glue stick. So you can see I'm removing some things here, and I'm going to start by going with my lowest layer, which are going to be the little stems that I created, and then little by little I will put the pieces back in the order that I want them to go. Definitely a slow and steady process. There's some trial and error, but if you stick with it, eventually something cool will come out of this process. And once I get my flowers to be somewhere that I, feel pretty happy with them and their placement, then I finally committed to gluing down my little character into the corner. I just wasn't sure, so I wanted to wait until I saw where my flowers were going to go.
I have so many flowers in front of me now. I don't even know what to do. I made all these cute little things that I don't know that I'm going to be needing. So we'll see.
I keep futzing around and, trying different things that I made and rejecting them. And eventually, finally, I get to a point where I start to add the leaves in. And once you start to add the leaves, then the bouquet really starts to fill in and get some good color to it.
Yeah, to me that feels right. That feels cohesive. Okay, I'm loving that. So I'm going to take a pause from building mine and I'm going to push apart my flowers. So take your time and I'm going to do something down to my bouquet, my vase to make it stand out a bit.
I decided that my little vase had just so many polka dots and I wanted something to break it up a little bit. So I grabbed a little bit of black paint and I created like a little, essentially like what is my idea of like a black ribbon that's tied around the bouquet. You could use any color, but the reason I chose black is because I also have some thoughts in my mind about maybe putting some writing down, and it's really fun to use a white gel pen to add some words or some letters. So I'm kind of thinking ahead here, and you could use any color at all or no color, but that's what I decided to do. And you can see here I'm adding a little bit of a black line. Later I'll actually round it out a little bit more. Here I kind of went a little bit too straight, but I'll round it out for the finished product. Right around this point, I started to think about how my girl's hand was outstretched and it didn't have anything in it. And it seemed like it could be a really cool opportunity to put something into her hand. And I got the idea of having her hold on to a flower. She could have held on to anything. It could have been anything at all, but I decided to add a cute little stem and a tiny little purple flower bud. So just be open to the idea that you can get some cool ideas as you go along, and just be open to changing your mind or adding to things as you go. One of the last things I did in this painting is I grabbed a little bit of white paint and I just used it to splash on something that kind of would give the effect of like baby's breath, to fill in some little gaps in the painting. So I'll show you how I did that. I was careful to cover my character so I didn't get paint all over her. And all it is, it's mostly water. I dipped into my white paint. I used a lot of water in there, and then I just tapped all over the flowers so that there was a little bit of white, and it really just sort of adds a little bit of splash and energy to the piece. I like to use this technique at the end of paintings, especially if I have large areas of color that could use a little breaking up. So what this white does is it served to break up some of those orange areas and large purple areas of paint where I just had so much concentrated color that it just breaks things up a little bit. And I like that. That's just a stylistic choice. I hope you all had fun with this project. This is where my piece wound up, and I cannot wait to see your floral creations and your characters that you've created.